She found herself gazing at her wedding photo. It was the most wonderful moment of her life, one of the happiest and most beautiful moments life had given her, but only if she knew everything was only a game. She and Felix were first best friends and then fell in love. They were the perfect couple at their high school and university. When they graduated, Felix proposed to her, saying that they should get married right away. She was overjoyed because he treated her like a princess and gave her wings to fly. She was also incredibly content with him in her life. The rest of her life was meant to be joyful since pure love brought people together, but nothing like that happened, just the contrary, in fact. She was Mrs. Lee Yn and was wed to Lee Felix, the president of Seoul Builders. She must feel quite fortunate to have married the new, young head of such a large firm, given that she was underprivileged and was raised by a single mother. Nah. If you are lucky, the president with a hard heart will return the same affection. They've just been married for 4 years, but what's hilarious is that her husband despises her and thinks he would have a nightmare if he sees her face. When she was walking down the aisle with her mother 4 years ago, when her love sealed their forever with a kiss, her happiness knew no bounds, but his next words made her puzzled and shattered her heart. She remembered those words like crystal clear until this day. The marriage she thought would be her happily ever after gave her tears she never thought, and now it feels like even her tears have given up on her. She doesn't cry anymore, she is completely broken. Enough of the joy, enough of the grin, from today, you'll only cry. I'll make your life miserable. Her mind still remembers that face of him when he kissed her, the way he was disgusted just by kissing her, and she still remembers those cold eyes full of hatred only for her. She doesn't know what went wrong. Everything went downhill in one night and it was getting worse every day. The pain of betrayal she felt is still a fresh wound in her heart. She was now certain that he had fully shattered her and that there was no other trick he could use to harm her. She was by herself in the reception. There was no sign of Felix. People laughed and whispered about the bride being by herself on her wedding day. The bridegroom's location Yn felt ashamed. She hung her head down. After a while, she noticed Felix hanging out with a group of girls, drinking and having a good time. He winked at her and walked over to her, who was now in tears due to the embarrassment she was experiencing. She didn't know what was wrong with him, but this was too much for her to handle. Some people were pitying her, others were laughing at her, others mocking her character, and others were trashing on her character. Marriage was such a sacred bond for them, where she would conceal his shortcomings and he would hers, but what he was doing crushed all of her aspirations and expectations she had for their marriage. Instead of standing up for her, the person who needed to was loving everything she was facing. How are things going, baby? How did it feel to be ashamed by yourself? Hey? She looked down as her tears started to fall, but her only phrase was, why? He chose to respond to something else instead of that, which further hurt her already broken heart. It's only the beginning, baby. Hold on and see how, once I decide to divorce you, you won't even want to live. I'll thoroughly destroy you, and I make a promise that you won't be able to trust anybody. Although you'll be alive, you'll constantly wish you were dead. She cried more when she thought about how he had treated her up until this point, proving that he had kept his promise or perhaps even went above and beyond it because she no longer wanted to live. All of his betrayals and heartbreaks had rendered her lifeless, and now all she wants is to leave this city because she feels suffocated here. She recalls the night of her wedding with great clarity since everything was beginning to go wrong on that day. After the ceremony, they planned to drive home and relax, but Felix parked the car in the middle of nowhere, forcing her to return home alone. Only she is aware of the betrayal she endured. When she arrived at their house and pushed open the door, a bed came into view. She opened the door further but then heard a strange noise. Oh Felix, quicker! She wanted to forget everything and yet start a new life. Felix turned to face her with a sneer and remarked, enjoying the view, as her hand slid from the handle and tears flooded her eyes. Under the cover, Felix was with a female. They were both nude. Felix sent the girl away, and she was horrified at how he could act in this manner on the first day of their wedding. He then approached her and stated, "I see you make it in here. Thought I will have one free day without you. Well, you are sleeping on floor, don't you dare sleep on bed, not here, not at my home. Am I clear to you? Can you at least give some respect to me? You just left me on street and drove off. You left me alone at our wedding. You slept with someone else on the first night of our marriage. And you want me to sleep on bed? You are a fucking cruel. What's wrong with you? What have I done to you? Why are you doing this? Who are you? I don't know you. Return me my Felix back, please." She sobbed, but it didn't affect him. Instead, he harshly pinned her against the wall, knocking the air out of her. "I dare you to use that tone with me again, because next time you do it, I won't hesitate to throw you out of this house with this sexy gown on." He smirked at her. Given that they just got married today, how is it possible for him to act in such a way? How in the world could she have handled things so poorly? On the first day of her married life, she was regretting being married. He continued to bring fresh girls every single night after that. He dismissed every employee and treated her like a maid, treating her as if she were his servant rather than his wife. Tears welled up in her eyes as she thought back on all the suffering he put her through and vowed never to forgive him. She adored him dearly, yet his actions betrayed her and involved adultery. He utterly destroyed her. She was wailing uncontrollably when the phone rang, causing her to startle as she reached out to pick it up. "Mrs. Yn, sir, would want you to make a feast for his friend who is visiting from overseas. Additionally, he gave the directive that nothing should go wrong since this is crucial to him." From the other end of the line, Felix's secretary spoke before hanging up. She sighed once more in the same pattern. She's sick and tired of him continually bringing his friends around and making her do all the work. When she gives it some thought, she realizes that it doesn't matter whether he is cheating on her, since she has likely already let go of her feelings for him, or, even if she hasn't, she has buried them deep inside her heart to avoid having them impact the lack of respect she would ever give herself. She attempted divorcing him, but that means all of her property will belong to him. She don't have anything other than a house, where she and her mother lived their entire life together before she passed away 2 years ago. She wants all of this to simply stop so she can be free.
I hate all this overthinking, The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver, no more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar, bring me back to where we started.
Finally, she had finished preparing the meals on the list he had sent, and she was now following her husband's instructions to clean the living and dining rooms. Not because she saw her husband when she opened the door, but rather the person who was with her spouse, Kim Taehyung, her first love and childhood lover. When they both turned to face one another, it appeared as though all of their previous emotions had suddenly resurfaced. Taehyung said, "𝘵𝘩𝘪𝘴," causing Felix to frown and ask, "Hey?" When he observed Taehyung holding his wife, he questioned him while looking perplexed. With a lovely grin, Taehyung released the hug and turned to face Felix. Taehyung pointed to Yn and said, "Barry, the one I told you about. But why is she here?" Looking back at him, he questioned. "Oh, she is my maid," Felix said arrogantly, pushing her away, entering the house. When she heard it, Yn's heart squeezed, but she was powerless since she was used to it. She grieved as she looked at him, who gave her a cold, severe gaze. It wasn't that he was cheating on her that hurt her the most, it was the daily humiliation and destruction of her self-respect. When all he has done for years is step on her expectations, her feelings, her self-respect, and their sacred relationship, all while wearing fancy shoes, she wonders why she ever expected him to act decently toward her for once. Perhaps I had unrealistic expectations, and now I'm paying for it. Maybe one day you'll have unrealistic expectations as well. And I'll wait for that day to see you suffer. Following some chat, they both started eating supper. Wow, it hasn't changed. Such a tasty Taehyung stated. Felix clenched his teeth and felt like punching his closest buddy, but he refrained since his purpose was to make 𝑦𝑁 suffer for the rest of her life, not to let her know that he is envious of her childhood sweetheart. When someone entered the kitchen while she was cleaning the dishes, she assumed it was Felix. She closed her eyes and braced herself for a blow from him, but nothing like that happened. Instead, she received a back embrace, which made her startle. She heard a deep voice she is quite familiar with ask, "Where were you? I searched for you for so long." Taehyung. He was staring at her with love and desperation, desperate for her love and to hold her in his arms once more. She turned to face him and noticed that his eyes still held that love for her and only her. She thought that if he hadn't moved to the US, she would likely be the happiest person alive because she believes in him and that he can keep her happy. "What are you doing, Taehyung?" She was afraid her husband would notice them and requested. "I'm loving you, very, and I've been missing you so much. Why are you being so indifferent when I'm the same your bear?" She pushed his hands away and moved away from him as he stated he was attempting to grip her hands. "Taehyung, I'm sorry, but I moved on and got married." She said that without caring how his heart burst into pieces, tears welling in his eyes. He waited for her for years, but she couldn't do the same. Again, he can't blame her because they haven't spoken in years, and how could she possibly know whether he was alive? "I'm sorry, I made you feel uneasy," he said, stepping back. She wanted to yell at him, that he didn't make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he made her feel cherished. She was expecting for someone to embrace her and console her, but her husband wouldn't allow her. They were startled out of their reverie when they heard a throat clearing. Seeing Felix standing there, she resumed doing the dishes, as he resisted the need to sob and spoke in the most agonizing voice possible. "I have to go, but I'll see you later," he said, leaving quickly. As Taehyung exited the building, she was about to approach the room, when she abruptly felt her back being sharply jerked back. Her pain-filled hissing is caused when Felix tightly holds her shoulders with his large palm. When she looked up at him, he was looking at her with redder, darker eyes that appeared to be going to burn her. She stares at him while her entire body shakes in terror. "Who the hell do you think you are? I'm sure I told you earlier to avoid my friends." "Hey." Felix tightens his hold on her shoulders. She made an effort not to cry in his presence. Her legs trembled in panic as she tried in vain to get free of him. She gave up when he said, "You disgust me so much, 𝘰𝘯𝑁, as she let her tears fall and gave him a blank look. "You really nauseate me. Because my father handed you to me, you are a burden to me. I genuinely want you to vanish right away." Her heartaches grow as he speaks more. His entire speech was assaulting her, like a thick stab. Could he not simply stop? Why does he need to mention everything again? Why does the thought of what he is saying make my heart ache? More firmly tightening his hold, he says, "You know I wanted to throw up when I kissed you that day because I had to pretend to be all romantic with a whore like you, damn it. Why am I forced to remain in this situation with you?" With his words, he forces her hard, leaving her speechless. He sneers at her and turns to leave, but he stops and stares at her instead. "What's worse, you want to be my bestest friend now?" As he approaches her, he asks. He leans in and asks, "Hey, tell me honestly, how many guys' beds have you climbed up?" In a low, deep voice. Her forehead is touched by his heated breath. She turned to face him right away, her eyes wild. She was unable to talk because she ran out of words. "TCH, why are you acting so shocked? Of course, I know you'll pretend to be innocent now, but I also know you're a Hugh." He then left her there in a state of shock and walked to his bedroom. She then gets down on her knees and sits. The only thing she could feel was Felix's words circling in her brain. The words how could he voice became trapped in her throat. She was unable to think clearly anymore. She allowed herself to cry as much as she wanted. She carefully stood up and made her way to her chamber. She sobbed uncontrollably while sitting on the ground with her face buried in her knees. She glanced at their wedding photo once again. The most amazing time in her life would have just happened, and she thought she would never want to forget it. But the pain and anguish she experienced as a result of Felix, however, had overwhelmed all of their past interactions. Felix had become more unkind to her since their marriage. After so many traumatic years, the marriage was still standing, despite being battered and damaged. She inhaled deeply. 4 years have passed. She glanced at their wedding photo once again. The most amazing time in her life would have just happened, and she thought she would never want to forget it. But the pain and anguish she experienced as a result of Felix, however, had overwhelmed all of their past interactions. Felix had become more unkind to her since their marriage. After so many traumatic years, the marriage was still standing, despite being battered and damaged. She inhaled deeply. 4 years have passed, yet no miracle has happened. She sighed and stood up, setting the book on the table before returning to the kitchen. She is startled out of her thoughts when she hears the echo of the loud front door slam. She abruptly stands up and dashes downstairs to meet him. However, she ran across another of Felix's girlfriends as she reached the bottom of the stairs. He groans and shoots her a dirty look. He asks, obviously already irritated by her presence, "Why are you simply standing there? Go prepare some meal for he and I." Stop standing there acting foolishly. She shook her head, unable to resist him, and proceeded to prepare supper for her husband and his mistress. Few weeks had passed since the incident, and Taehyung had continued to pay them visits ever since. Though he would pretend to see Felix, he really only went to see Yn because, even if he couldn't have her, he could at least admire her from a distance and imagine what it would be like to be her husband. Today, however, Felix was not home, and Taehyung and Yn were talking when Taehyung noticed the deep bruise on her. "What is this, Berry? Who did this to you?" Yn made an attempt to remove her hands from his, but he was prepared and grabbed her firmly. "Not now, Yn, stop keeping this a secret from me. I'm your closest pal." His words caused her eyes to well up with tears, but she sucked them back in and shook her head unfavorably. "Stop, Berry, I know Felix is doing all this and he is your husband, stop it please. You can talk to me about anything you want, and I'm always here for you. I'll always be your safe haven." She started weeping while he was holding her, and he tried to soothe her by patting her back and whispering encouraging words in her ear, but she didn't stop. She had been hugged in the previous 4 years, so Felix made sure no one was close by in case she felt smothered. She told him everything, from beginning to end, after she had sobbed uncontrollably, and she now wonders if this was nature's way of punishing her for abandoning him, forgetting about him, and breaking her promise rather than waiting for his genuine love. He kept comforting her and then made her happy by telling all of the jokes he knew. When Felix arrived and saw them laughing, he saw how lovely she looked while smiling, almost forgot what her smiling face looked like, but then remembered his aim and came towards them with a frown on his face. Taehyung then left, leaving them both alone. She heard approaching footsteps as Taehyung was leaving, and as she looked up, she saw Felix with his breath fanning her face. "You are useless and worthless," he screamed into her face. "I ordered you to clean the home and what do you do, flirt with your husband's best friend?" She recoiled at the coldness in his voice and took a step back. "You just know how to annoy others and flirt with males. Be mature and grow up. Now leave my view and begin cleaning. Stop sobbing like a fool. When Taehyung came here, you were grinning like a fool, and now you are crying? Why do you already miss him? You want a deeper flirtation with him? What a shameless scumbag you are to flirt with your husband. But what am I even supposed to expect from a scumbag like you?" She moaned as she struggled to hold back the tears and sobs, but they just seemed to intensify. In the end, she let it get to her and screamed and cried out carelessly as he passed by and walked into his room. Suddenly, Felix entered her room, and sat down on her bed, encircling her in his broad arms. She was so stunned when she saw him. But more than that, she was horrified by his touches. A few years ago, if you had asked her, she would have given herself to him without hesitation, but today all she felt for him was contempt and hatred. She was prepared to go out and let him sleep in this space. He then abruptly pulls her back and gives her a hard embrace. She made every effort to escape his hold, but it was ineffective. He continued to mumble only one sentence. "Dad, let me be with Hee-in. I detest her, I want Hee-in. I punished her for what her father did, I got Emma's retribution now." It wasn't love that two married lovers made, it was just his lust, and she was disgusted. She tried desperately to escape his hold but it was impossible. She felt like a whore to her own husband who was abusing her. She was stunned by his words but even more so when he tore her dress and began unbuttoning his shirt. "Do you honestly think of me as a useless piece of garbage? Do you honestly believe that I am the sort of woman that climbs up on men's beds to entertain them? Are you really so mad with me?" Since he began to speak, she hasn't been able to stop crying. He will tighten his hold on her and keep drawing her toward him each time she tries to shake him off. "I'm worn out and have no more energy." She only desired to sleep and never awaken. She was forced to face Felix. He was looking at her emotionlessly while maintaining a blank expression. Her entire body began to tremble from fear. Before she could do anything, Felix slammed his lips into her as she attempted to push him aside. She was shocked and taken aback. She attempted to gaze into his eyes with widening eyes but was unable to respond due to the unexpected shock. She attempted to push him away, but he grabbed both of her hands and tightly clasped them together. She can smell the booze coming from him because he was so near to her. He is wasted. And all she could think was, "Taehyung, please help me. Please, I don't want to be raped by my own spouse." He separates his lips from her and allows her some breathing room. He approaches her ears and whispers in a low voice as he descends to her neck, "I cherish you. Hee-in, I adore you so much." When she hears him, her eyes immediately widen. Following those words, calling the name of another woman, she was only able to sense disdain and hatred. She violently shoved him, grabbed the blanket, and quickly left the room for the guest room, where she locked herself inside. "Why, oh why, did you treat me like that?" She cries non-stop till I am unable to weep any more tears for her. After calming down for an hour, she grabbed a blanket and called a landline, saying, "I am so tired of everything now." After the first ring, Taehyung picked up her phone when she phoned his number. "Yn, are you alright? Why did you phone me at 2 in the morning? Are everything okay? Do you require anything?" He spoke in a single breath, but when he overheard a wailing voice on the other side, his anxiousness spiked. He begged fervently, "Yn, please say anything," but all he heard was, "Tae, I'm really worn out. I am over everything. Please make it disappear. I'd rather not share a home with him. I despise him, so please remove him from here. Please help, I feel suffocated here. She said in the most desolate voice, sobbing. He don't want anything more than to take her away from all of this, and now that she also want that he will do anything for it. After seeing her as his best friend's wife, now seeing her so helpless, and how his best friend treat the person he treasured the most, is breaking him even more. Don't worry, I'll take you far from him. I'll be there soon. He won't be able to harm you anymore. Trust me, I'm here. For the time being, she is more important than him becoming sick, therefore he didn't care if he was wearing pajamas or slippers. He stated this while jumping out of bed and running to the door to grab her. And no, Tae, not today. Please assist me once more because I want to confront him one final time. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. He mumbled as his eyes began to well up with tears at what she said. Oh okay, and returned to bed, where he remained awake all night. When the door opened and his closest friend entered, he was waiting in the living room for her to bring him breakfast. What brings you here so early in the morning, Taehyung? He said that upon closer inspection, he was found to have bags under his eyes that were red from crying all night, and to have not slept in days. The moment he saw the sun had risen, he didn't wait for a moment and grabbed the first clothes his eyes laid on and threw them on his body before making his way here to free his love from this cage. However, when he saw his once called best friend, disgust filled him. And he said in his deep hoarse voice, indicating how much he had cried. Hey! Why would Felix's best buddy call him at 6 in the morning to inquire about his wife? He is most likely insane. Perhaps you didn't get any sleep the night before. Where the hell are you, YN? He was shouted at by Taehyung. He punched him while yelling, what did you do to her, you bastard? He grabbed his collar. What did you do, my love? My berry? I won't hesitate to kill you right here. He yelled and punched Felix in the face, but Felix pushed him away. Did your love not inform you that she was my wife? Whore simply wants someone to FXX, tisk. Taehyung continued to strike him as he continued to speak, preventing him from finishing his thought. Don't you dare say anything about my love, I know everything, what kind of bastard husband she has, what kind of life she is having, how you made her life hell, I know everything and I'll make you pay for all you put her go through. He was verbally pummeling him with each phrase until he stopped. Tae. His heart clenches as he sees his love standing at the bottom of the stairs, her eyes had a black circle under them, her hands were shaking from weakness, her lips were blue, and her complexion was a light yellow. He rushes over to embrace her firmly. Don't say that, Tae, it was all fate, I said. I am here, nothing more will happen, I'll take you away from everyone who tries to hurt you, I swear. I'm sorry for abandoning you like that, because if I didn't leave you, we would have been. His fear was caused by her feeble voice as she spoke. WTF is happening here? What sort of melodrama is this? Screamed Felix. YN pushed away from the hug and moved in his direction, with him following. Is your retaliation over yet? They were both shocked and confused by her question. Felix, I am familiar with everything, she added, glancing at him. I am aware that you are my mother's closest friend, Aunt Liari's son. He was startled and surprised when she gazed into his eyes. But are you not yet finished? You fulfilled all of your promises to your father. You destroyed me from the inside out, I no longer even want to live. Not yet, are you? Are you still not satisfied? All those words were impossible for him to believe. You got your retribution so beautifully, he said, staring at her without being able to speak. In actuality, you did more to your mother than my father ever did. She was on the edge of tears at the time. Why you attempted to rape me yesterday? She stated, she was sobbing. She is met with disbelief from both of them, and because neither of them knew how to respond, one was shattered for not protecting her and the other felt guilty. She just went on. Are you finished yet? You know what's funnier than the fact that my father has been in prison since raping your mother? Even though I was only 10 years old, I was a witness to my mom sending him there. She shattered him with her words, and he looked at her with sadness in his eyes. You know what hurt the most, though? I adored you. I loved you so much, but you treated my sentiments, dignity, and self-respect like they were unimportant, all for some vengeance that wasn't even my fault. I wonder how someone could even consider exacting retribution on an innocent person when they weren't even involved. I feel suffocated here. You fulfilled your promise, and I am unable to live or love anybody else. Please liberate me now that your revenge is over, or I will perish in this place. She bowed down, finally letting go of the little self-respect she still had in order to escape this cage, since she was too exhausted and just wanted to sleep forever. She pleaded once again in the most frantic voice, Please. When you treated me like an slut and stepped on my dignity yesterday, I realized I shouldn't hold on to it any longer and that I should finally let go of it in order to possibly free myself. All this while I tried my best to not let go of the little amount of self-respect left in me and beg you, but yesterday. Please grant me freedom. Please. I'm not to blame. Please. I did my utmost to ensure that he received the worst penalty possible, since our rapists like him have no place in our world. She cried. So, kindly. Please get me out of this prison of retaliation where I done nothing wrong. While Taehyung was already there, his heart squeezed at her condition. He was hating himself the entire time, thinking that if he had never left her, none of this would have occurred. She pleaded, sobbing aloud, causing his tears to finally fall. She abruptly got to her feet and grinned madly. Well, what do you know? I don't need your divorce. I'd rather live on the streets than with you. However, there are divorce papers in your room if you decide to release me at last because you feel like you still have some humanity in you. Taking her luggage, she remarked. Let's go, Tae, or I'll suffocate to death. She spoke as she moved toward the door. Once there, she turned to face him and said, You may live with your love now, because I won't ever send my daughter or son to exact revenge on your daughter or son, since I'm not inhuman like you to do it. She said that as she left his life, leaving him to live out the rest of his days in remorse and misery. He yelled and broke everything in his path because he was being a jerk to the one who loved him more than anything and would have given his life to save him. Taehyung was there already. Her situation, where she had been sobbing since they arrived, made his heart constrict, but he couldn't bring himself to soothe her since he felt as though his words were trapped in his throat. Sadness? His throat feels as though it's impairing his ability to swallow something. Guilt? Anger? Sadness, because he wasn't there when my love needed him the most and she had to suffer so much alone? Feeling guilty since he was powerless to free her from the prison she was in or to solve any of her problems. Anger that the person he placed the greatest amount of faith in is to blame for all of her anguish and misery. He approached her and hugged her as she sobbed in his arms, and he sobbed alongside her. Tae, why? Why is it hurting so badly? When we know falling in love would hurt, why do we even try? He was unable to reply to her. Love hurts. It hurts really bad, and he understands her pain because he witnessed her with another man and knew she was married the entire time he waited for her. He wanted to rip his heart out in pain, but he decided to remain silent and let her cry until she stopped sobbing because he understands her suffering so well. He hopes that this will be the last time she sobs for a particular guy, and that this night will mark the end of her misery. He hopes that the soon-to-arrive future will be the happiest one in her and their lives, and he will take steps to ensure it. What brought you here, Mr. Lee? Seeing the biggest businessman in his office, the lawyer got up from his seat and said, I'm here to submit these paperwork, but Felix stopped him by raising his hand. He said that when he gave him the divorce papers, it shocked him. Was he married? Nobody even knew, did they? Given how successfully he concealed it, just a select few people were aware of it. Felix left the police station with his hands quivering, his knees shaking, his eyes watery and red, black circles under his eyes, and dark circles under his eyes, all of which indicated his frail condition. As one of them approached him, the cops saw him and stood up. Why are you here, Mr. Lee? One of them said, you should have phoned us, and Felix gave him a fumbling glance before whispering. He said, lowering his head, I'm come to turn myself in, shocking everyone. Hey? The policeman inquired. They were surprised even more when he replied, for domestic violence, I've been hurting my wife for 4 years. YN was staring at the TV in disbelief. She had only recently gotten the divorce acceptance letter and 90% of his assets, as he had said in the divorce, so how could this be happening now? Even though he never physically injured her, the mental anguish and heartbreaks were far worse than the actual suffering. She was grateful that he had finally accepted her and had let her leave. When one of the reporters said, her train of thinking was disrupted. Mama, can we buy ice cream please? A 5-year-old boy said to his mother, who was reading a book under a tree in the park. His mother gave him a sharp glance, making him pout. This is the 3rd ice cream you are asking for. I'm not letting you have more ice creams, Taemin. She said sternly, making him pout even more, but soon his eyes sparkled when he saw his dad with his favorite ice cream. He ran to him, taking the ice cream and then to his friends before his mother would shout at him, leaving poor father alone to deal with mother. Yakim Taehyung? What the hell do you think you are doing? He'll get sick. Are you in your right state of mind? She was cut off by a pair of lips on hers. Come on babe, let him have all that he want. If he gets sick, I'll take care of him. He said, running away, making her run after him, giggling. You will pay for this. She said, giggling and running after him, making him feel euphoric. He know that he'll sleep on couch at night, but who cares, cause at the end he always find his way into her arms, cause she also can't sleep without him. It's been 10 years since then, since she got free from the cage of that 𝘷𝘩𝘢𝘐, then he have been trying his best to make her feel happy. Her single smile is his treasure, and he'll do everything to see that. He helped her move on. He helped her stand on her feet. He helped her love him. He helped her get all the emotions she have buried inside of her again, and she helped him heal. They both healed each other and made their own little world full of smiles, laughters, and happiness.